Hey everyone, this is Erin Lincoln back with another quick stitch kit. This one's all about Christmas and adding special touches with beads and sequins on really warm and cozy felt cut pieces. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to show you how to put together the mitten and the stocking and some quick beading tips for success. All right, here we go. First up, we're going to do the stocking. I have made all my cuts to make an open top stocking, a back and a front. So I'm going to need 2 cuffs, 2 toes, 2 heels. The toes and the heels are optional, so that's why they have separate dies like this. 2 stocking cuts, and we have a loop there for an ornament. Now if you look, the stocking has stitch lines for the entire cuff. But when it comes to the toes and the heels, that's a little different. You can make a stocking without toes and heels, so therefore I couldn't add in those extra lines, stitching lines, and we have to add those in with a type of edger style die, which we do at a second run through the die cut machine. You can see what those dies look like here. They only have stitching holes on one edge, and the other edge fits the contours of the stocking for easy placement when you go to die cut. The mitten basically works the same way, and here I'm going to make a solid mitten, so there's no opening on the top. So 1 felt cut, and then I also have this interfacing. It's a stiff felt, and I'm going to list it right below this video. It's for hat brims and it's very stiff, so because we're only using 1 layer of felt, it's going to hold it really, give it some weight and substance. Now you can make a mitten with or without a cuff, and so again we have this edger style die that fits the contours up here, so you can add that into your stitch line if you choose. So I'm going to show you how to do that right now. First, with the stocking, you're going to take these edger style dies and you are going to perfectly fit them along the contours of a felt cut of the whole stocking. They should fit exactly along the edge, and all they're doing is they're cutting the stitch holes, like the interior stitch holes that aren't included in the parameter of the stocking. Also at this point, because I have room on my felt cut, I'm going to go ahead and cut the Christmas tree beaded stitch design. Only want to run it through once, so you might as well be time efficient, right? Okay, if you'd like, in order to keep the toes and heels in place, to make sure those stitch lines, interior stitch lines they're creating, line up with the holes on the parameter of the stocking, you could tape them in if you'd like, just to hold them. All right, you can see I have all my lines here. Now we're just switching to the mitten just to show you how it works. It's really just like the stocking. I have a cuff cut already, and now I'm going to use the edger style cuff die, and if you see there, I need to flip my die cut over. You need to make sure, because it'll fit perfectly. If it doesn't fit perfectly, you got to flip it over. And also cutting the holes for my beaded design. This one's the argyle. Just run it through. Now if you want to make a mitten with no cuff, which is definitely a design idea that you could go ahead and use, you just wouldn't have to use that edger style die. You would just be cutting the beaded motif at this point. Okay, run it through, and as you can see, it's very much like the stocking. These things kind of go hand in hand, which is why I'm doing them at the same time. And that's the stitch line that die added. Okay, as far as the beaded designs go, I think the best way to give you that information is through a PDF, step by step. But since, I have to do this anyway, I can impart some beading pearls of wisdom for you, so to speak. Okay, first thing, you're going to want to use 1 strand of embroidery floss and a small 24 or 26 size tapestry needle. These bugle beads are very narrow. I'm going to just put in all the bugle beads. I like to do all of one type of bead at once, and then I'm going to tie it off. So I'm just showing you how those work, and it's tied off. They're all in there. Now let me tell you why I'm tying this off when I have more string. If for some reason a string breaks, minimize the damage. So you don't want to tie them all on one length of thread, because if it breaks then you lose everything, versus you can probably minimize the damage and fix it. Okay, next up is sequins. This is how you do the sequins. Put your needle up through one hole, up through a sequin, up through a bead, down through the sequin, down through the same hole. Hope that makes sense. Your string, your floss or string wraps around the bead, and that's what keeps the bead on when you go back down through the sequin into the hole. There you go. Okay, and I have one last thing to do, which is beads, and I had tied off the sequins and the seed beads, again, minimizing damage if something happens. Now for these beads, between the bugle beads in this case, I'm going up through the hole, picking a bead, picking up a bead, and then going straight down the same hole. And these are also the holes on this Christmas tree motif that the bugle beads are threaded through. So these stitch holes, you use them more than once. Now again, to minimize, we want to avoid any breaking of string or floss because you put a lot of work into this and they would be hard to fix. So I'm using fray check. You can get this at your local fabric store, and it's basically like a glue. It stiffens up the thread. It's gonna help it not break. So we're trying to make it as secure as possible. Okay, it looks like I skipped way ahead, and I kind of did, but I want to show you what I'm going to be accomplishing. I want to stitch in the cuffs, the toes, and the heels. And what I am doing is only doing the inside stitches. And so I'm going to do the top of this cuff here and show you. Now I always do a little beginner demo for whatever stitch project I have releasing. So that's where we're at right now. I like to clean out my my holes, get out those felt plugs with the back side of a large needle. Just likes to see where I'm going. All right, I'm going to insert my needle between the cuff and the body of the stocking, and then up, and then when I stitch down through the second hole, it's through both layers, and that's how it's going to be until the very end. It's a running stitch, up hole 1, down hole 2, up hole 3, down hole 4, and you're going to get this line of sewing stitches with spaces in between each individual stitch. So when you get to the end and now you reverse, you fill those in. And what this results in is both the back and the front of what you're stitching looks the exact same. Now when you get back to where you started, you're going to insert your needle one last time to make sure there's no spaces in the stitching on both the back and the front. One last stitch is going to do that, but instead of going through 2 layers, I'm only going to go through 1, and now both tails, my start and my end of my thread of my sewing, is in between the layers. I'm going to knot it off here, usually do a double square knot, and then I'm going to snip my thread, and that knot is going to be tucked in between the 2 layers of felt and hidden so you don't see it. And that is how you do that handy trick. Now I'm going to do the bottom of the cuff. And so I've gone ahead and did that in the same manner. And at this point, I'm going to sew these together. But there is a trick. There's always a trick, isn't there? Because at this point we have to worry about floss color. If I stitch around this whole stocking, I go from Ocean Tides to Aqua Mist to Autumn Rose. And what color floss am I going to use? So the solution to that is this, or at least one way. You peel back the edges of the top layers. In this case, that's the cuffs, the toes, and the heels. And you use your needle with thread that matches the main body of whatever you're stitching. And you only stitch through the interior part. I'm not stitching into any Ocean Tides felt. I'm using the floss I want to match the Autumn Rose, which is the entire body of the stocking, and I'm only stitching through the body of the stocking right now. And to be honest, if it's hidden by something like a cuff or toe and or heel, I'm not even worried I'm getting into all the stitching holes that are created because it's going to get covered up. And so now I'm past the cuff and I'm doing my running stitch, which I like to do, directly on the autumn rose felt. And I'm going to do that all the way around and then back. Now at this point, I thought this was much more obvious as to what I was doing than when I was doing the cuff, but I had to show you the start, so we did that. I can flip away this entire heel part of the stocking and just stitch through the autumn rose part of the stocking, which is the entire felt cut. So there you go, that gives you a better idea. Okay, at this end, I'm going to insert my little loop so I can hang it off a Christmas tree. Slightly complicates things, but not really. I'm still folding back the Ocean Tides felt cuff. I'm not stitching into it. I'm only stitching into the autumn rose stocking. And now between the two layers of the stocking is this loop. There are 4 holes, so I just make sure I get those. Just a matter of counting and making sure your needle goes in the right place. Really simple to do, even though it seems much more complicated when I'm talking about it. Always the case. All right, I'm going to go back to up to the top. And so I have done half of my stitching of the stocking when I start turning around. And I go back the other way. Now I could cut my autumn rose floss in between the cuffs and the toes, like between the cuff and the heel and the heel and the toe and the toe and the cuff. But I think it's really 6 one way, half dozen the other. You could do it that way, or you could, make up or use up the same amount of time with what I'm doing here. So really it's up to you. Now that's just to show you that I'm leaving the top of this open. Put in a candy cane, maybe a box of crayons. I'm not really sure. I need to check that. A little toy, a little tag, a gift card for sure. So the top is being left open. You can see I have stitched, I've reversed it, and I've gone all the way back to where I started, and I'm just going to tie it off. I got a little bit more to go. There you go. Now you can see on the Autumn Mist and the Ocean Tides color, I have not stitched anything. So what we're gonna do those individually, just those little lengths of the outsides parameters. And we are stitching through all 4 layers at this point and closing that up. Going really fast. I did want to show you that, I just get to the end of the heel in this case, I turn around and I go back, and then like before, both the start and the end of my thread, both tails, meet up between 2 layers of felt instead of on the outside. So I can tie my knot, snip my threads, and everything's hidden. You won't see a single knot on these projects because they're all cleverly hidden away. Just make sure the tail end is on the same felt layer as the beginning. There you go. It's between the top heel and the top of the stocking. That's where they're at. It's very complicated. I feel like I bungle these tutorials. It's hard to say. So many words. All right, just tie it off, snip it, and then you will do the same on the toe and on the edges of the cuffs. Snip, snip. There you go. And the front and the back look exactly the same. I'm going to do these other parts and then I'll be done. Okay, here's my mitten. Now, I wanted to show you this. I sewed the top closed. You could always make this an open top, just like the stocking, and stick something in there. Instead, I sewed it all the way around on a piece of stiff felt, and you can see it keeps it stiff. It's not as floppy as the stocking, thanks to this interfacing that I will link to underneath this video. And so I went ahead and I finished off the edges of the cuff on my mitten, just like the stocking, But I'm just going to add a loop a little differently. I have a length of silk ribbon. In between the layers of felt, I'm just pulling it right through with my needle. I'm going to tie a knot down low and then tie a nice big bow up top to make a loop for hanging on a Christmas tree. This is silk embroidery ribbon. This is actually something we used to carry in the store, and I don't see it anymore, so I think you might have to go to a craft store and find this. I would just double knot up here at the bow so it doesn't slip out real easily. Pull tight, make 2 pretty loops. And there you go. You have an alternative to using the felt loops included in the kit. I don't know about you, but this girl likes options, so I always try to put a couple different variations into whatever I'm designing. And you're seeing one here. Okay, so we've covered the mitten and the stocking and a few little beading tips. If you ever have any questions, please come on the forum and ask me. I'm happy to check in and help you out. Okay, there you go. I hope you enjoy this and happy Christmas crafting. Bye-bye.